Congratulations to you. You made it to part 2. Very nice. In this part of the video, I'm going to show you how you can add a 3D object. And for the object, we're going to use a ball, which is going to roll down this beautiful road. Now, we could animate this by hand using keyframes, but that's just a pain in the beep. What we're going to use is a rigid body simulation. And we're going to let the simulation do the animating for us. Now, the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a plane, which is going to be our road in the 3D space, which the ball is going to roll on. So in order to do that, we need to select 2 trackers as reference points for creating our road. And the trackers are going to help us place the road into 3D space. So the distance matches with the video. I will explain as we go. So in the video clip, select a tracker. In this case, it's the white one. And then in your viewport display, you will see a tracker colored orange. This is the current selected one. So this one is closest to the road. So press Shift S and select cursor to selected. Then press Shift A and add an object, choose mesh and click UV sphere. Now scale this down by pressing S. Now in order to get a better view, we're going to add in a new layout. So click on the plus sign, General, click on Layout. Now in order to see our trackers, we need to go to Viewport Overlays, go to the bottom and click on Motion Tracking. Now we can see all our trackers. And if we hit numpad 0, we go to the camera view, we have our scene. Now let's select our first tracker. And let's look for a second one to estimate the end of the road. So look for one which is closest to the road. And in this case is this one. Now press and hold middle mouse button and move your mouse slowly to the left. Then we go to the 3D view. And as you can see, the 2 track points are highlighted orange. So now let's add in a plane. Hit Shift A, Mesh Plane. Now let's resize this by pressing S and scaling it down. Hit R to rotate, and let's just hide this sphere for now. Scale it down a little bit more so it matches the road. And let's just move it and hit Tab to go to edit mode once you're happy with the placement. Choose 2 vertices, press E to extrude, then press Y to extrude on the Y-axis. And when you press Y, you will see this green line, which represents our Y-axis. So now it will be perfectly straight. Now we're going to move this on the X-axis. You can do this by pressing G, then pressing X, and then move the object. But for this kind of work, I like to use the Move tool. So select it, and then we can just use these arrows to move it on the X or Y axis. So make sure it lines up with your road. Press E to extrude again, hit left mouse button, and then move the arrow to move it. So as you can see, we're only using the Y and X axis. Press E to extrude, left click, and then move the arrow. Now it doesn't need to match up perfectly with the road. So once again, press E, hit left mouse button, and then drag the arrow. Now this pretty much lines up. I think it's a good start. So let's go from here. You can use these trackers in the clip and in 3D view to see if the road lines up. And as you can see, the left tracker is behind the road and the right tracker is in front of the road. So this looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. So let's just move on. Check a couple of more times. Yeah, this is just fine. And let's bring on our sphere back into view. And let's rescale it so it matches the road. So move it up a little bit, scale it down, pressing S. Then just move it into place. Now, once you're happy with the position of the ball, we can click the plane and hit tab to go to edit mode. Change the selection mode to edge select. And let's select all our edges. Select one edge, then hold shift and select the other edges. Press G to move and press Z to move only on the Z axis. And just move it up a little bit. Then go back to object mode by pressing tab. Let's go to the physics properties tab and click on a rigid body. Make sure your plane is selected. Set the type to passive. And let's change the shape to mesh. For bounciness, we're gonna up this a little bit. This isn't really necessary, but it kind of helps with a good motion. Now select the ball, click on rigid body, and for type, we're going to choose active because this object is going to move, so it needs to be active. Passive objects stay still in your scene. Let's change the mass to 2 and also up the bounciness a little bit. Now go back to frame 1 and let's hit space to play. As you can see, nothing happens. And this is because our plane is perfectly lined up with the x-axis, which is the ground. So in order to make this ball moving, we can use a force field. And we're going to use the wind force field for this, which kind of blows wind to our ball in a certain direction, which is going to make the ball move in the other direction. So to add in a force field, we first need to add in an object or an empty, but we are going to use an object. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. So hit Shift A, choose Mesh and click on UV sphere, scale it down a little bit by pressing S and move it behind the ball. So something like this. Hit Ctrl A and click Scale, then click on Force Field and let's go to Wind. Now as you can see, the arrow points to the direction which the wind is going to blow, so to speak. So we need to rotate this to line it up with the road. Just like this. To rotate, you can hit R and rotate, or you can use the rotate tool on the left. Line it up with the road. Now we need to disable this UV sphere from the render, so hit the camera button behind it. Now as you can see, we didn't change the settings, and the ball is moving, but it's moving a little bit too slow, so we need to up the strength. To hit space to stop playing, so select the UV sphere which holds the force field. Let's change the strength to 10. Go back to frame 1, hit space to play. As you can see, it now slowly starts rolling. And it kind of accelerates. And now it stops. That's because we hit the end of our rigid body simulation, because the default number of frames is 250. So let's go to Scene Properties, Rigid Body World, Cache. Here you can see 250, and let's change this to 438, which is the end of our clip. Now go back to frame 1 and hit space. And now it should go past 250. So this is pretty nice. Now once you're happy with it, press bake. This is going to bake our simulation. Now select the plane and hide it for now. Let's also hide this force field, because we don't need it anymore. Now just let's take a look. Press numpad 1. As you can see, this is pretty nice. Now to add a little bit more realism, we're going to add a shadow. As you can see, this last part isn't really nice because it just falls down the road. It falls off of the road. That's because it's the end of our plane. So I actually need to stretch this a little bit to the right. So for this, you can edge select the edge, just move it on the y-axis. Change your view with numpad 1. Try to align it up. Now, if you move the z-axis just a little bit, it doesn't really matter. And press bake again. Now, as you can see, this bake failed because we are in edit mode. So you need to go out of edit mode by pressing tab and hit bake from within object mode. For some reason, it doesn't work in edit mode. So if you see your rigid body simulation is failing, you probably started it in edit mode. So press bake again. Let's look at the result. Now it's just fine. But as you can see, it stops there. And that's because this is the end of our clip and simulation, because we are at frame 438. So if it stops here, it doesn't really matter, because this is the end of our clip. Now, in order to create the shadow, we need to create a so-called shadow catcher, which basically is a plane which is going to project our shadow. So for this, we're going to create a copy of our road. You can do this by selecting it and pressing Shift D. With the new plane selected, press M to make a new collection. So click New Collection and name it. I'm calling it Backup. Press OK. And let's just hide this whole collection. Now we are left with the road plane, and we're going to remove the edges. So make sure you set the selection mode to faces. So we can select faces. Select all the edges, hit X, and click on faces. Now we are left with the plane. Let's change the selection mode to edge select. Click on one edge, hold Shift, and select the other edges. Make sure our transformation orientation is set to global, and let's just move these edges. So we widen up our road. It needs to move in this direction because of the shadow orientation. So let's move it a little bit further. Now, in order for shadows to work in Eevee, go to the render properties, film, and add transparent. Make sure it's selected. Now let's head over to the shading tab. You can add it by hitting the plus, go to general and click on shading. So first we need to create a new material. So click on new. Let's just remove this principal BSDF. Press Shift A, click search, and search for diffuse. The next one you need is shader to RGB. So Shift A, search for shader and click on shader to RGB, add it in. Press Shift A again, search for color and click on color ramp. Let's throw that in also. Now we need to add in another diffuse. So Shift A, search, type in diff, click on diffuse. And we need transparent BSDF. So Shift A, search, transparent, add it in. And we need to actually mix these two. So we need to add in a mix shader. So again, Shift A, search, mix. Now put the color from the color ramp into the vector. Put the diffuse into the first shader and transparent into the second shader. Now go to the materials tab. And for the shadow to work, we need to change the blend mode from opaque to alpha blend. And we need to make sure that our second diffuse is set to black. So move the slider all the way down. Now if we go to the color ramp, and if we move the slider slowly to the left, you can see that our dark road is slowly disappearing and gets transparent. So move it up to a point where you are happy with it. So it kind of matches the rest of the scene to something like this. Now let's add in a sun. So press Shift A, go to light and click sun. Now move it a little bit up. This isn't really necessary, but for the rest of the scene is good. As you can see, we now have a shadow. So press G and Z to move it on the Z axis. And let's just try to line up with the shadow of the scene. Now we could move it in this direction and then hit numpad 0 and look at the rest of the shadows in the scene to line it up. As you can see, this is a little bit too straight because these here are pointing in a different direction. So we actually need to adjust this. So an easy way to line this up the correct way is to add in a second view. And let's choose the left view for the camera view and the right view for a view in our 3D space. Now zoom in a little bit and make sure you have our fake shadow and the real world shadow in one view. And in our right view, we can adjust the sun's direction so that the two shadows are lining up. Now I think this is pretty good. I don't know if you can see it because I have the plane is a little bit too dark. So let's head over to shading. Let's correct this. So in the color ramp, change linear to ease. So we have a little bit more control. Move the white slider a little bit to the right. And as you can see, the shadow pretty much lines up. It's maybe a little bit too dark, but you can fine tune this. I think this is pretty good. So we leave this for now. You also can see there's a little gap in our between our ball and our road. So to fix this, what we simply can do is move our plane just a little bit up. So I change the view. So select the plane, press G, press Z to move on the Z axis and just move it slightly up till there's no more gap. It doesn't really matter if the ball sticks down this plane because we don't see it in our final result or our final render. So it's no problem. So let's shade smooth our ball. Hit right mouse button and click shade smooth. So this is better, but it isn't exactly round. So for that we can use a subdivision modifier. Now as you can see here, the shadow doesn't really match up with this little building. So in order to fix it, we need to adjust the plane. So hit top, so select the plane, hit top, select the edge and move it to the left. And use rotate to line it up with the building. Now there's one more thing to do. Go to the shading tab, select your wall, click on new, press Shift A, and we're going to add in a color ramp first. So Shift A, search color, click color ramp, add it in. Hit Shift A again, search for wave and choose wave texture. Move the color to the vector of the color ramp and move the color of the color ramp into the base color of the principal BSDF. Select your wave texture and press Ctrl T. This adds in a texture coordinate and a mapping node. In order to use Ctrl T, you need to have the add-on Node Wrangler enabled. Now let's change the settings of the wave texture. Set the scale to 9. The distance to 1, detail to 2 or to 0. And change the last option to -2.9. Now for the rotation, just copy the settings I'm adjusting in the mapping node. Just copy it. And set the scale to 4.6. This is basically it. We only need to change the color ramp from linear to constant and move the slider a little bit to the middle. And then we get nice little zebra stripes. So that's basically it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And let's check the final animation one more time. See you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye!